Hello, everyone. If you're not new to 1,000 Women Strong, I'm going to give you a brief introduction before we introduce our panelists who will speak amazingly about the work that we can be doing on a state and local level regarding student debt crisis. And so 1,000 Women Strong is an organization that is focused on really strengthening the wealth gap regarding Black women in the student debt crisis. We are the ones to hold the highest amount of student debt than any other demographic. We are the ones tackling student debt crisis more than anyone else. And so really being able to kind of correlate the issues that we are dealing with, along with more advocacy overall towards Black people that do have the most student debt in this country. And so 1,000 Women Strong is focused on making sure that we are being centered in the conversation. We are signing petitions. If you haven't signed the petition, I will be sending it later on towards the conversation, and really making sure that we are putting ourselves first in this conversation overall. Right now, we're joined by the amazing Assemblywoman Alicia Hyman, as well as the Lieutenant Governor of Rhode Island, Sabina Matos. Please correct me if I said it wrong, in order to talk about what we can do at the state and local level regarding these issues. And if you both would like to introduce yourselves, I'd rather you guys do your introduction than for me to go ahead and talk about your successes and the work that you are both doing.
Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here joining with all of you to talk about this important topic. As you hear, my name is Sabina Matos. I'm the Lieutenant Governor for the state of Rhode Island. I was appointed Lieutenant Governor early this year, the 70th Lieutenant Governor for the state of Rhode Island. And I am the second female Lieutenant Governor and the first woman of color. I proudly identify myself as Afro-Latina, very proud of both of my heritage as a Latina, as a Black woman. And I have been very fortunate to represent before I was appointed to this position. I was representing a neighborhood of Olneyville, Silver Lake, and Valley in the Providence City Council. Was the president of the Providence City Council, and I was in the City Council for 10 years, over 10 years before being appointed to this position.
Amazing, amazing work.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I love speaking about my journey, not being egotistical, but I just want people to know if I did it, then you can too. My name is Alicia Hyman. I'm an Assemblywoman. I'm a single Black mother of 2 girls. I did not plan to run for the Assembly, but somehow, some way, my activism in the community and education brought me to where I am now. I've been in the Assembly for 6 years. Education is definitely where I put a lot of my strength and emphasis. I serve on the higher education and education committees of the New York State Assembly. I am also the assistant majority leader, which is when the deputy or the majority leaders are not able to run session. I am in charge, and I've been able to do that twice. Couple times this past session, but I'm an immigrant. I grew up in Queens, which is the most diverse county borough in the country, and I'm proud to represent the 29th Assembly District, which is in Southeast Queens.
Thank you so much. So everyone can kind of get to know the both of you. I just have one quick question, and it's just, what made you want to go into public service in the first place?
It wasn't my intention to go into public service. And this is what I say with most women, and I'm sure Lieutenant Governor Matos can relate. Sometimes it's not your intention. A lot of women, men are different. We're just built differently. And so I worked for the state education department, and I volunteered for my daughter's school district. I went to public school myself, and after 10 years of being on the school district, the assembly member preceding me, the seat was vacated, and a couple people said to me, which were men, 2 men, good friends of mine, said, "Why don't you run?" And I was like, "Why the F would I do that?" And sorry about that. And I ran, and I think the question I had to ask myself was, am I qualified? And I said yes. Do I have a passion and a love for this community to make it better? And I said yes. And I asked my mother and my daughters, and they said go for it. And it was as a family, we ran for office, and I realized more women need to think that they are qualified for positions and run. And we have seen definitely a wave across the country of exactly that.
Thank you. I have to say that my experience was similar in the sense that I never had the intention of running for office. I was very involved in my neighborhood. I was involved with the neighborhood association, with the local CDC, the local community development organization that was building affordable housing. I was on the board of the organization. And just like the Assemblywoman said, in my case, there was two men who approached me, two council members who approached me and asked me to consider running for office to represent my neighbors. The neighborhood, the ward that I was representing at that time was represented by the same person for 24 years. And at the beginning, I say no, which is typical for females. We have to be asked 7 times on average before we run for office. And for the men, it's different. And for us, sometimes what we think is, oh, I'm not ready, I'm not qualified, I'm not ready. Those are the things that we think about. For the men, is most of the time they think they're ready. Don't need to be asked that many times. So the first thing I said is no, I'm not running. And then both council member asked me to take some time and think about it, and that's what I did. Then I started thinking about where I was in my life. I just graduated from college, was in transition on my for my work in life. And I thought, well, you know what? I think it would be a good thing if I run for office. If I win, I can help my community. I can prioritize the things that I've been working on. If I don't win, I win the experience. In my case, that was what happened. The first time I ran, I didn't win, but I win a lot of experience. That I got a lot. And I learned that also just by being part of the process, just by running for office, I was able to expand my networks and get to know a lot of things that were happening in my community that I thought I knew well and I didn't know enough. And I continued to be very involved and eventually ran for office a second time in 2010. And then that's when I was elected. At this point, the person representing my neighborhood had been there for 28 years.
Wow. Yeah, so thank you so much for the both of you for sharing. And we're talking about you both being in such high level of position as Black women. And so we already know that we are already a minority when it comes to being in public service in these types of positions, but you are both there. And so, talking about how does student debt affect even prosperity of jobs or of the overall economy, and kind of what can we really do to tackle that issue on a state and local level. And so what are within both of your positions as an Assemblywoman, as a Lieutenant Governor, what do you both think that can be done on a local, state level to tackle these issues?
Well, in this state of New York, I was fortunate to be the subcommittee chair of the Tuition Assistance Program, TAP. So one of the things that we know, student debt is a problem in this country, and we have seen more and more of on the national stage about erasing student debt. If you're talking about people losing jobs, one of the first bills they don't pay back is their student loans. So as an assembly member, remembering that I had student loans, we tried very much to raise the amount of money that the state of New York would give to students who were eligible. And that was stagnant until last year, until this budget cycle, because of the economic stimulus that we got. We were able to raise the amount of money for TAP, Tuition Assistance Program, for every student in the state of New York. Now, it only went up about $500, but if you think about the cost of books, if you think about the cost of attendance that is not factored into the daily life of a student, whether you're commuting or whether you're on campus, it does help. And as I said earlier, as an assembly member, we bring a lot of focus to that issue. We're talking about giving businesses or billionaires tax breaks, but we're not talking about how we make Black people move forward in this higher education sphere. So it's really, it can be very frustrating because, and I'm sure the Lieutenant Governor, like sometimes the way government moves is so slow, and a lot of times what your agenda is sometimes gets thwarted, not by bad things, by constituent services and so forth. But I think we as a nation, especially since this pandemic, really have been talking about student debt relief and need to put more. If we can spend $1 trillion on the foreign war, we can invest more in higher education in this country.
Thank you, and I agree. And I have to say some of the things that had been taking place here locally in the state of Rhode Island. Actually, the governor just signed into law legislation to provide financial education at the school level for the population at the high school level. I think that's something that is lacking in our community, especially our minorities community, is to understand, to have more knowledge of the finances and be more aware of what we're signing in when we sign for a student loan or for just using credits in general. So this is legislation that was championed, has been a priority of Senator Cano. Sandra Cano has been making this a priority for her. It has been working really hard and finally was passed and approved. I think that the education, financial literacy is very important for our community to understand the consequences of the decisions that we make when we take on a student loan. The other thing that we have to do is to, and it goes back to the education. And I can tell you for my own experience with my own student loans, right? Sometimes you start getting the offers in the messages and telling you, oh, you can just pay the interest and you can defer the payment, and that just becomes a big problem for us. And once we take on those options, at the beginning, it sounds like, oh yeah, this is a good alternative, a good solution. But what we do is just compound the interest even more, and it would take longer to get out of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, touching on the fact that we have to tackle this on the both local and on the state and national level, right? But also financial literacy in our communities has been lacking, right? People don't know what to do, what's the right way to go about it. Are there other alternatives, or if there may be a cheaper option for school and education, right? And so really finding those different levels of how do we get involved and how do we get people from our communities involved in the process, so that they are more aware of what's going on. And so as we're talking about how do we get people involved, what would you say to a young Black woman that is trying to decide her next steps? Like what type of advice would you give her?
Well, I would say, and I have two daughters. One's 22 and the other one's 11, and they're very different. And I do meet a lot of young women who come to visit the Capitol, which is behind me, when we're in session. And I will say education is important. That's the first thing. I would not be where I am today if I didn't have the education and the opportunities that came my way. And I think when the opportunity arises, the education is there to propel you to the next level. We know it doesn't go away. It's something that you carry with you forever. And it helps you with critical thinking and financial literacy and budgeting and just, voting and civic engagement. Education opens all of those doors. So for any young Black woman, I would say that you always have to plan as much as you can. We know life will throw you a curveball. The Black women are most likely to be underpaid, most likely to be overworked. So you want to be in a position where you're in charge and where you can make decisions that are best for you, and you have a family, and an education will provide that. So if that means that you go to a trade or vocational school, which I worked in that industry for 15 years. And a lot of these young women and older women, and then this is another thing too, we talk about education, it's lifelong. It's not just right when you get out of high school or in your 20s. You can be 50, 60 and go to school and change your life. So what I would tell these people, especially Black women, if you're going to go into the health industry, you can start out, and I had seen this, women would become a home health aide. Then they would go back and they become a certified nurse aide. Then they would go back and they would become a patient care assistant or a medical assistant or an LPN or an RN or a physician's assistant or an anesthesiologist. And I could go on, but sometimes it was just them scraping together $350 or $400 to become a home health aide. Now, the Black woman, when she becomes a breadwinner in the household, she lifts everyone up. So if you uplift Black women, you uplift entire communities. You lift the block, you lift the neighborhood, you lift the community up, you lift up the city, you lift up the state. So education, whether it be on a vocational level or if you're able to go to community college. And I used to be able to sit down with people and help them fill out financial aid forms. And you don't have to do everything now. I just turned 50 this year. And if you told me that I would be here at the State Assembly, I would call you a liar. But what I'm saying is that the goal is to get to 50 and beyond. The alternative is, as we know, the cemetery. So if you're 21 and not sure what you're doing or not sure if this is your major, continue. Get the bachelor's degree. Maybe I don't know if this is my career. Get the degree. The degree itself opens the doors. The certificate of completion from a trade school opens the doors that would normally be closed to you because you did not have that skill or trade or you did not have that degree. We have to start somewhere and work. You know, the years will come and go. It's 2021. We didn't think we'd make it through COVID. So I tell all Black women that when you uplift yourself, you're changing the dynamic of your family for generations to come. Sorry if that was long-winded.
No, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Mhm.
And that is so true. And I have to agree. Education is key. In my case, I can tell you, I came to the United States as an adult already. I was 20 years old, didn't know the language. And it was tough to learn the language as an adult. But if I have not gone to school and gotten a degree, I wouldn't be where I am right now because the rules are different for us. You know, when we're running for office as a minority, as a woman and as a Black woman, as an immigrant woman, they're going to be asking for qualifications, the things that they're not asking of anybody else. So if having an education, a college degree opens a lot of doors for me because it would be easier for anyone to just dismiss me as oh yeah, look at her her accent and all that. But having an education gave me that validation that unfortunately they're looking for, even though we know that we don't need that to for our own value, but that's how some people out there are looking at you. Is she capable? Does she knows what she's doing? Does she know what she's getting into? So education was key. And before I was in this position as lieutenant governor, I used to work in the Office of Diversity for the state of Rhode Island in helping individuals looking for job with the state. And one of the things that I always recommended to especially every minority coming is those that had their degrees. I used to tell them, it's like, put that right up front in your resume. Don't put it at the end, put it right up front, because we already are being judged just by looking at our names. They think that we don't have the qualification. So if you have the qualification, put that right up front in your resume. That's the first thing that they see, and then go into everything else. So all this just to say that education is key. If you are able, have the possibilities, try to get your education. Right now in Rhode Island, we're fortunate because we have the, so you can get your associate degree in the Community College of Rhode Island, and it's free. Right now in Rhode Island for 2 years of education is free. So this is another opportunity. Find out what other options there are. Another thing is right now, I know college is important, but there are many of us that maybe college is not the way we want to go. There's so many trades right now that are in need of workforce. Maybe go into a trade until so you can start making a living and earning money. Like you can make a career in the trade, but you can use getting into the trade while you go to school also, so you don't end up with as much a student debt from going to an education. Just take a look at the opportunities that you can find in the trade also.
Yeah, definitely. And I think more now we're seeing a lot of young people saying, well, maybe that's not for me, or maybe opening and having my own business is my route instead of going to school. Or even if I am going to continue my education, maybe starting at community college and building it up that way. And so it's really interesting to see how on the state level, we're finding more programs that might be able to make it more flexible for that to happen, or finding a combination of both for it to work for people. I know that we have a few participants here. If you have any questions, please drop them in now so that we can have our panelists answer those questions as well. And then just, I know Ms. Simon, you have a sharp deadline soon. But one last question, I have is, sometimes we often question the dynamics of race, racism, and power, especially in the United States. What kind of barriers do you see exist that help shape some of those inequalities that people have? Oh, you're muted.
My kids are downstairs being loud. Let's be clear. These state houses were not designed for us, right? I'm sure if you look, behind me, that's a statue of a white guy. On the other side of the building, there's a statue of a white guy. Becoming an assembly member, just like the lieutenant governor said, I was like, am I qualified enough? I mean, I had 2 degrees. Some of my colleagues have no degrees. Is this designed for me to be here? And it took me I think about a month before I actually realized, yes, I deserve to be here just as much as anyone else. So when you think about race and the dynamics and the barriers, they are still there. We are still having firsts. Just in New York, I'm sure everyone nationwide knows this, where we have the first woman who's going to be governor. We have the first attorney general who's a woman and a black woman. So there are many barriers in what we do, but that's a bigger, more public scale. But even on a lower scale, if you think about principals of buildings, our superintendents, there's a lot of principals in New York that may be Black, but are the superintendents Black? Are the people who are making the curriculum Black? Is the curriculum reflective of the tests that, because we're in a very test heavy world, are the questions reflective? Is the artificial intelligence reflective of us? So there are so many avenues that Black women are reaching. We've seen it on a stage of the Olympics. We've seen the way they treat athletes, that they're just supposed to perform, but what about the mental and mental health that's needed to perform at that level, compete worldwide? So when we think about just Black people and the barriers are there, but I think forums such as this, and I'm glad it's recorded, it has to be shared, because I'm so impressed with the journey of the lieutenant governor. Because when you think about it, this society makes you think that this phone or this device is, if you're on social media, you have to have made it, or you're monetizing what you're doing. But there's so many young Black women that are out there who may not be able to afford the monthly plan, but hopefully they're studying, they're spending their money on the work, because the work that you put in today, it pays off in the end. And I tell my daughters that when I make them take the trash out, and I could probably pay someone to do it, but I had to do it. And you had to learn the value of $1 and understand that this world is yours for the taking, but you just have to be equipped to do it. So there are many more barriers. There are many more firsts for us to to kick down, but it is the education, it is the access to education, it is being involved. If you're a parent, being involved in your child's education, I think was what I did, because I just wanted to make sure that if I had the time, I was a PTA mom, a master's degree, but I was there at those PTA meetings, making red velvet cakes or whatever it took, because I knew that my involvement in my child's school told them that education is important. So I think there are many barriers that we have to overcome, but it's piece by piece. It's breaking down the systemic racism in every room we enter and having a seat at the table. And as Shirley Chisholm said, if there's no seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I take that to heart when I'm in those rooms and making policy that I know affects Black women in the city and state.
All right, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Now, thank you. I think that it's very important for us to remember that we're being first, but there are others watching us. And for me, it became very, very real when I went after my appointment. I went to visit one of the vaccination sites, and it was at a Boys and Girls Club. And there were several young women and a couple boys also there, and they were so excited to see that I was there. And that's the moment when it really clicked on me that the historic moment that this is, and that there are young women watching me, and that I have to set an example and make sure, and it's kind of recommitting myself to doing everything I can to do a good job, because this is something that is normally for the white men, or in many cases white women don't have to carry on this challenge, that if I make a mistake, it's going to reflect in my whole community. And I want to make sure that I'm not the only one here, and that the door is open for others to come. So, but it's been really an eye-opening in that experience. Really helped me to understand that the commitment in that, and that the importance of the work. I think that's when it finally clicked on me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when we talk about how can we kind of move forward in a way that makes the most sense for everyone involved, it really starts with who do we have in places of positions of power that can kind of help change the conversation. And be in those rooms and talk about how can we help the people at the local level that have been disenfranchised the most. And so thank you both so much for being a part of this conversation, for being here. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. If you have not signed the petition yet, please do so. We do have a goal of getting to about 50,000 signatures within the next 4 weeks we have left of this campaign. And it could be an immense support for you to sign it, to share it with the people you know, so that we can urge Vice President Harris to cancel student loan debt and invite her to talk about it, as well as herself being a Black woman, knowing that we are the ones most impacted by this issue. If you guys have any last words, please feel free to do so. I know Rebecca in the comments had said some thank yous for speaking up on the fact that college is not the only answer, but trade school also provides a great way to earn money while learning a skill and come away with the skill ready to use, or community college as a good start as well. Congrats to the both of you for doing so well. And so if you have anything else to add or any finishing comments, please feel free to do so.
I'm going to jump because I'm going to talk because I have to jump. But I just think, like I said, forums like this are so important. And it's not just these forums, but it's what actions people do afterwards. And education is lifelong. It is, I don't know, I think a lot of young people put demand, like timelines, like I gotta have this by this, and I gotta have it by that. But when you get older, you realize it will come, just not always when you want it. But the years will go. The difference is in 5 years, will you have a degree or will you not have a degree? Will you have a certificate of completion to start a trade or will you not? So the years are gonna come, but what you do with those years is up to you. You can blame it on the kids, you can blame it on a man, but at the end of the day, it's on you to make sure that you take the steps you need to take care of yourself, because you can't take care of anyone else if you don't take care of yourself. And we know an education affords you that opportunity. I have to run to a meeting before it ends at 8 o'clock, and a
Yes,
visual
thank
to
you.
those families in Haiti. So I want to say
A
thank you very much
pleasure.
today. Lieutenant
Thank
Governor,
you.
it's a pleasure meeting you. Let's keep in
Pleasure
touch.
meeting you.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just want to say that thank you for this opportunity. And again, think about, I think that message that the Assemblywoman just gave us is important. You have to take care of yourself also, because you're not going to be able to help anybody if you're not well. So make sure that you're taking time to take care of yourself. Remember, when we are in the airplane, they always tell us, if you don't put your mask, you have to put your mask first before you put it to the person next to you. I know when we are working on social work, we get so embedded in the whole process and sometimes drain emotionally. So make sure that you take a break also and recharge your energy.
Yes, thank you so much for really bringing in that mental health aspect of it, and physical health, and just overall well-being. I think that's something that's often left without the conversation. And so the fact that you brought it up is perfect. But thank you so much for taking the time, for being here, for speaking to us today about, all of this and your experience as well and your journey. I think that's definitely some great motivation for other people hearing this and watching you speak about it. And so thank you so much. And thank you all, everyone, for attending. Again, the link is in the chat box. If you have not signed the petition, please do so. And follow us on our campaign and our journey to really canceling student loan debt, especially for Black women and women in general that have the highest numbers. So thank you so much for everyone. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.